Welcome, world, to our draft day recap. We are here the day after the draft. There's been a few trades since the draft, but this video is going to focus primarily on what happened yesterday. We appreciate you all kind of being there and making it go very quickly. It's like the fastest draft I've ever been a part of. We were done in 15, 20 minutes. So thank you guys. And yeah, I think we're ready to go unless Jake, you have anything else to say about the draft yesterday.
Nope.
All right. Glad I brought you in here to bring us some content. So we're going to go through each player's picks one by one. And we're just going to start by what the draft order was yesterday, which means we get to start with our buddy Danny. Starting off 1.01, he goes with Caleb Williams. I think that was kind of the pick. I don't know, Jake, your feeling on it, but I mean, I think that's the pick you make, and I think he might have made it with about a minute 58 left on the timer.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was picking him all along. The Bryce Young trade made it so there's no way he's picking Marvin Harrison. That was the only other possible pick you could make in certain situations. But yeah, especially given his team, he only had one quarterback, so this really solidifies his team. I mean, he still needs a quarterback 3 for bye weeks, possibly. But yep, Danny's team moving up slowly, but making progress.
And I'll say, I think there is a chance Daniels goes first in some random leagues here. I think there's someone that may prefer Daniels to Williams with the ceiling of Daniels. But I mean, Caleb Williams was the pick, and I think Danny did what Danny needed to do. That was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I know you didn't like his second pick. I thought it was fine, but I'll let you talk about it since you don't like it.
It's not that I disliked his second pick. I just disagreed with the order he had the running backs, frankly. Um, I just don't see taking Blake Corum over Benson. And that's just a personal opinion on my end. I just don't get it. And honestly, I think there's even an argument for me personally to take Keon Coleman over Blake Corum. I probably the minority there, but I don't see Blake Corum. I get his situation's pretty decent, but people like Williams over there for the Rams. Corum's got a lot of use on his body, and a lot of his statistics were really good at Michigan because they handed him the ball so many times. He wasn't, a yards per attempt guy. He just like a sure mileage, hand the ball off 30 times, so he got 100 yards, rather than, hand the ball off 10 times to get the 100 yards. So he just wasn't my favorite, but you seemed happier with Danny's pick, so you give all the pluses of that one.
I mean, Kyron's had injury problems as well. Corum pretty much has a somewhat blank slate of health, so I think he's definitely has the most upside out of all the running backs available. I'm not huge on Benson, so he wasn't really up my wheelhouse. But and Coleman, I mean, you could take Coleman if you want. That's probably the highest upside if he somehow is the wide receiver one there, and kind of separates himself. But I think Corum is the safe is. I mean, it's a handcuff running back. If you're just building a team of handcuff running backs, which it kind of seems like Danny might be doing, then I don't hate it really.
And fair enough. Which brings us to Danny's next pick. He went 2.11 now, so end of the second round. And I guess we should just clarify Blake Corum was 2.01. I think we missed that. So this is another second round pick. He goes Jermaine Burton. I think this is a solid pick. People are really big on Jermaine Burton. I think you take this pick knowing production year one is low, but production in the future may be pretty high up there. When the Bengals wide receiver room kind of loses Higgins and some things going on there, but I like Jermaine Burton. I probably would have took a flyer on another running back if I was Danny at 2.11. Vidal, Irving, Allen, Davis, and Estime went pretty soon after that. But that I don't mind that pick at wide receiver, especially after going Corum at 2.01.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'd probably go some running back. I mean, Danny has a ton of receivers, which we'll talk about another time. But I don't think he really needed the receiver depth. I mean, if you're really high on Burton, just take your guy. But I definitely think there's some guys around. I even like the San Francisco guy. Thought he was interesting. So there were guys available that might turn into something, but again, take your guy. Moving on, the next pick he had was the 401. He took Troy Franklin. People in Denver don't like Troy Franklin. I liked Troy Franklin before the draft. His college quarterback is still his quarterback now, so he has that built in already. And I don't know. I could see that pick working out. So
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it looks like he slots in right where Judy left that hole with Judy being gone. I thought Franklin was a terrific pick at that point in time. You know, it's a fourth round pick, it's a fourth round wide receiver, but it seems like someone who's going to be at least a top 3 receiver on a team. So I like Troy Franklin. I like his situation. Uh, Again, it's a guy that Sean Payton likes. So for anybody that's going to pick a Bronco, is the game past Sean Payton by? I think is the question, and I think there's debate about that. I tend to be a Sean Payton, truther, and think he's still one of those guys that you can rely on. But I like the Troy Franklin pick a lot. I thought that really was a very good pick from Danny.
yeah.
Moving on, sorry, anything else on Franklin?
No, I think that was it. I don't know if we have to talk about Eric Gray. I don't even know if he kept him, to be honest.
Okay. We can skip Eric Gray then. That was his last pick at 5. So Jacob, give this one a grade. Danny, how do you do? A through F? What are we looking at here?
I'm giving Danny. I mean, he didn't have a lot of picks, which is kind of tough. For what he had, I guess he had a pretty standard picks 211, 301. There's not really a difference.
Yeah.
I'll give it. I'll give it like a B plus. I didn't love the 211 pick. I liked all the other picks. So overall, very good, but not A, I guess.
So, and here's where I think we're going to disagree. I'm giving Danny an A. I disagreed with more picks than you did. But when you walk out of a draft with Caleb Williams, I know like it wasn't a choice, but Danny deserves the A, being that he got Caleb Williams yesterday. So while I disagree with everything else, I think you're extremely happy leaving a draft with Caleb Williams in tow. And so I'm giving him the A pretty much out of the, badness that his team was last year. He got Caleb Williams, but hey, there's something to be said. He didn't falter. He didn't like panic and go nuts when Caleb Williams was sitting there. So I give him the A.
Yep. Didn't mess up being bad last year, so got credit for that.
Yeah. Now moving on to Lamb Chop, who was picking second. Probably the majority of this video, given that he had 13 picks in the draft yesterday. So starting with 1.02, he goes Jaden Daniels. And what did you think about that?
For his team, it's definitely the pick. I don't know if it's even definitely the pick. I mean, he ended up getting Bo Nix anyway. He probably could have survived with that and taken Marv. Gotten that. Marv's a different level of player to Jaden, so I kind of would have liked to see him possibly go Marv. But at the same time, I get it. Land a franchise quarterback, went 102 in the draft, a lot of upside. So that's what I thought about that pick.
I think it's really hard between Daniels and Marv in Lamon's shoes because, I mean, first of all, draft capital for a quarterback, Daniels is starting there for 3 years minimum. Quarterbacks, I think, in this league compared to even other dynasties are more valuable than we probably value quarterbacks in this league more than any league in the country would be my guess. because it's a little nuts how we value quarterbacks, which I think is awesome. But Daniels seems to be the guy in Washington. They're putting some weapons around him, and hopefully, he's the guy for Lamon forever. He doesn't need to think about it. And I think that was a tough pick, but I think in his shoes, he made the right call. I think given his team, he probably picked Daniels over Marv, which brings us to 1.07. Brock Bowers, Mr. Tight End, top tight end drafted since Kyle Pitts, who I think when you drafted him went like 1.06. So kind of interesting here. I know a lot of guys like Cam were super high on him. I think Bowers was the pick when neither May nor Odunze fell to him. I think you make the Bowers pick and you slot him at tight end for the next 5 years to 10 years, and you're happy with it.
Yep, Bowers was the pick. Had little pipe dreams that he might fall to me, but I didn't think that was realistic at all. That being said, just best tight end in the draft. A lot of people calling him generational talent. I don't know. It's an interesting situation QB wise over there. I guess they'll have to figure that out eventually, but luckily tight ends are kind of a safety valve anyway, and I'm sure he's going to be getting lots of targets from Gardner starting this year. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting they went with him having Mayer as well, which Lamon actually also has Mayer, which is kind of fun. But I like Bowers, and I think really solid pick from Lamon at 7.
Yeah. Moving on to 8, he picked Worthy there. There were some guys I thought were better picks than Worthy personally. I get the upside, but I probably would have gone Brian Thomas over him. Worthy is a good he's fast. Obviously, you're counting on Andy Reid and Mahomes to make him good. He had a good last year of college, so somewhat high upside, high risk probably. Could see him just end up being like a field stretcher that doesn't get the ball all that much.
I agree completely, and I know Lamon was actually between the two from talking to him pre-draft. I would have gone Brian Thomas. I think Thomas over Worthy was at least my opinion. However, I will say if you're going to bet on two people in this world to be good, make a wide receiver good at football, Andy Reid and Mahomes are not the worst ones to do that with. Like we said in our pre-draft one, he kind of fits that Tyreek Hill mold. Obviously, he's not Tyreek Hill, but he fits that mold. And, I don't disagree with the pick, but I like you, would have gone another way at 8. Which brings us to 12. He goes Bo Nix. I thought this was a great pick for him. I thought this was the pick to make. It gives him a third quarterback. It gives him a starter. I've come around to Bo Nix way more than if you had this conversation with me 2 months ago. I think he's in an okay situation. He's already been named the starter. He's looked good. Very good for Lamon. And like I said, quarterback's extremely valuable in this league, and he got 2 of the top 4 in this draft.
Yeah. First round draft capital. So made it worth it. And I don't know. The situation is interesting. Basically, all relying on Peyton. If Peyton doesn't end up working out, he probably ends up not being the starter for whatever comes in after Peyton leaves. So, really counting on Sean Payton to turn things around there. I liked Bo Nix. I had a hard time picking between him and the guy I picked, but yeah, I think he'll be solid, and that's kind of all you could ask for.
Yeah, and I think an underrated portion of that pick by Lamon was knowing he was going to get Corum or Benson, whoever Danny didn't pick. He knew he was going to get a running back. So at 2.02, 2 picks later, he goes Trey Benson, who maybe the number one running back in this class coming back to it. I think he's in a great situation in Arizona. I really like Trey Benson. As I said with Danny, I had him over Blake Corum. I thought this was a tremendous pick by Lemon, and certainly the pick to make, especially as he didn't get Brooks in the first round.
Yeah, obviously we talked about it already. I'm not quite as high on Benson, so didn't hate the pick, didn't love it. I guess it's kind of the pick you have to make at that point if you're looking running back. I kind of like the Miami guy, but hard to see him breaking through with all the guys they have there already. So I get the pick for sure. Moving on to, unless you have anything to say, moving on to Ladd. I think Lad's a pretty controversial player. I know some people like him a lot, some people don't. I tend to like him. I think he's an interesting guy. I think he could do a decent amount out of the slot there. And that kind of seems to be where I think that offense is going to work most of the time, is kind of short field and running the ball a lot. So has a great quarterback behind him. I really like the 204 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of the pick Lemon had to make sitting at 204. Because he just got Benson. Maybe he took a flyer on Wright for Miami, but I can't hate on the pick. I'm lower on Ladd than others. But I think it was a pretty decent pick. I probably think, I think there are reasons to take some of those other receivers. I think there are reasons to take Wright, but I think Ladd was probably the pick to make. He made it. He's in a good situation. He's got a good quarterback. They are in desperate need of weapons for them right now, given everybody they lost over the offseason and Quentin Johnson just looking a little shaky. When one of your probably the biggest competitor for touches in that offense right now is DJ Chark, and that's a little crazy. So I think it's a good pick, which brings us to 2.10, which is a pick I did not agree with from Lemon. And he goes Ben Sinnott at the tight end position. I didn't understand this pick. You drafted Bowers. You really are not going to play two tight ends. You also had Dawson Knox. This felt like a pick of, I have so many draft picks. Let me just draft somebody. Kind of similar to Danny. I think he should have taken another flyer on a running back, Vidal, Irving, whatever. He ended up getting Irving, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think you take a flyer. I don't see going tight end here. It's not a big enough need. Rookie tight ends don't do much. And you just got a tight end that you're supposed to slot in every week, no matter what. So I just didn't see the pick here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what his tight end room really looks like. Sinnott, Knox, Mayer. I don't know.
And Bowers.
Yeah, I mean, it's an okay pick. I don't think Sinnott's going to be bad. It could end up working out. I mean, most tight ends in year one are not that good, so I might even go one of those guys after, like Burton, maybe is a good pick for him. I know his wide receiver depth isn't great, so get a high upside receiver, something like that, because he's not taking Bowers out of the lineup to put Sinnott in. So I can't see a situation where it happens. But anyway, it's fine. I think the player's not that bad, so we can't kill him. But at the same time, probably a better pick to have there.
I agree.
Yeah. His next pick was Polk. I liked Polk a decent amount, actually, before the draft. Could see him easily being the wide receiver one in New England. If Drake May ends up working out, that's going to be a really good pick at the end of the second round. I probably had him over. I don't know. I'm tough between him and Burton, but I had them both over Mitchell and Leggett personally. So that's kind of how I saw that pick.
Yeah, I don't have too much on Polk like you. I think his fit's pretty good. It relies on, when Drake May becomes a starter, which I think it's crazy he's not just starting the season. I don't know where that came from in New England, but hey, Patriots way, right? So who knows? But I thought that was a pretty good pick. If you're gonna go wide receiver right there, I think that's awesome. Especially seeing as he had another pick 2 picks later again with 3.02, and he goes Bucky Irving from Tampa, the running back. I think this is a good pick, frankly, and this is some bias. I think there are better running backs behind him. I think Ray Davis was the pick here, but I had Ray Davis over a bunch of guys ahead, and felt very lucky that I got him. But if Irving's your guy, Rashid White puts up numbers, but his metrics aren't great. So maybe he takes some of that away. So I like this pick by Lamb Chop.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like it. I think Rashad White's bad at football. The only problem is I think Bucky Irving's also kind of bad at football. So I don't know who's going to end up getting work there. I assume Rashad gets it at the start just because he's been there and they somehow had a good offense last year. They're just going to kind of keep rolling with that. But obviously, our running backs get hurt. If he shows out if Rashad White gets hurt, could end up being a really good pick. They use their running backs a lot there. I don't know. It was fun.
I'm gonna skip McMillan because he traded McMillan already. That was a Tank Grease pick.
Yeah.
Now we're in the 4th round. I think I'll just combine these two, or combine the last 3. He got Roman Wilson, Devontae Walker, and Will Shipley. 2 in the 4th round. Shipley beginning of the 5th. All fine. Taking flyers. I like Roman Wilson. I liked him at Michigan. Devontae looks like he's got some potential. I don't hate any of these picks. Again, I probably would have said take a flyer on Tracy instead. But or even a Luke McCaffrey who looks like he's going to be starting kind of right away. But I don't hate either of these picks. I can live with them from Lemon.
Yep, I liked all the picks. We spent too much time talking about it because he has so many picks. So let's just move on to you. You made the obvious pick. I'm sure it did take you any seconds to make this pick.
We didn't grade Lemon.
You want to grade Lemon? Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give Lemon a B. I think he did some solid jobs. I think there were probably some guys I would have taken instead. But I think a solid B for Lemon. I think the draft fell how he wanted it to go. But like we said, I would have taken Brian Thomas. I wouldn't have taken Sano. I wouldn't have taken Irving over some of the other guys. And even Ladd was questionable. But I think he did a great job. He filled out a lot of his team. So he should be feeling happier about his team after yesterday.
Yeah, I think I liked his draft a little more than you. I probably like his draft more than Danny's. I think he filled a lot of positions that he needed to fill. Did a good job of mixing up running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends. Obviously, he needed all the picks to do that, but I'm going to give him... I actually liked his late round picks a decent amount, so I'm going to give him an A-.
Good for Lemon. All right, that does bring it to me. As you said, I made the obvious pick at 3. My job at 3 was to pick who Lemon and Danny didn't. So anyone who watched my pre-draft video or last year's pre-draft video, because I spent 5 minutes on last year's pre-draft video talking about Marvin Harrison, go back and watch it if you don't believe that. I got my boy. I was very happy to get him, but like I said, I just had to click the button. If Danny and Lemon both want to pick Marv, then I picked the QB that's sitting there. So I clicked the button. I was happy to do it, and I got the guy I really like. But I would have been pretty happy with the quarterback as well, just given their value.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say on Marvin. But your next pick was Rome. I really like Rome. I was probably higher on him than you. So, yeah, I think Rome's really good. I have him in pretty much the same as Neighbors. I might have taken him where Trevor took May, even. But, yeah, great pick for you. And Good job.
That one honestly again kind of felt like I clicked the button pick. If Trevor took Odunze, I probably just take May. I back of my head was Bowers honestly, but it was pretty much I'm gonna click the button between Odunze and May. I think I told you even before the draft I'm probably gonna take Marv and Odunze and walk away a very happy person, and that's pretty much how I felt with those two.
Yep. Yeah, I know some people don't like Rome as much. Talk about contested catches and whatnot, but I kind of like him. So
Yeah.
is what it is. Moving on, your next pick was Marshawn Lloyd. I like Marshawn Lloyd a decent amount. Obviously, he's on a really good offense. Josh Jacobs, I know he got paid, but it's kind of a weird contract. I think they have like an out after the year or maybe next year or something. They seem to like Lloyd. So, yeah, I like Lloyd a lot. I think you did a really good job getting him where you did. Could have seen him going even earlier, but yeah.
Yeah, again, I really kind of felt like the draft kind of came to me. I wasn't going to take another wide receiver for certain. I wasn't going to take Sano there. And so he was kind of just who I take. And so he fell to me. I was pretty thrilled that he did. I really like him as well. I like his situation. Like you said, Jacobs is a little funky. Done here. uh, his neck apparently, even though it was odd. But I like Lloyd. I was pretty happy again with him. And really, we can kind of summarize my last three picks: Lloyd in the second, Ray Davis in the third, Tyrone Tracy in the fourth. I took three flyers on three running backs that I really like. Tracy, Davis, and Lloyd, I think, are all in really good situations for them. While they're the two, they're not behind someone that's really good, maybe except for Jacobs. And so I really like the three of them. Tracy is, I think, his like second year playing running back ever now, and put up real production. And you know, Singletary is ahead of him. I like Singletary, but I don't know. Feels like he fell entirely too far. And then I like Ray Davis. I would have taken him over a bunch of the running backs that got picked ahead of him. So that's I was extremely happy with how the draft fell, but it really kind of just felt like it came to me, and everyone was really just clicking the button because I didn't really have anybody else in mind for any of the picks I made.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Ray Davis outlook wise. I mean, it's a fair pick to make at the time. I get the pick, but I probably like James Cook a decent amount more than you do. So if you're not into James Cook, then it's a good pick. It's just not really how I feel. I did like Tracy. I liked Lloyd a lot. So
All right.
yeah.
So grade me. How'd I do? Five picks.
Uh, it's always hard to say because like 5 picks isn't a lot of picks. I think for the picks that you made, I like the value you come out with. I'd probably give you A or A minus. Obviously, I'm higher on Odunze, so that kind of helps your draft. I'm also probably higher on Lloyd than some people, and I am higher on Tracy than a lot of people. So 3 of your 4 picks I really like, and then Marvin, obviously. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna refrain from grading myself. As I said, I'm very happy with how the draft went for me. Frankly, I'd kind of do similar to what I did with Danny. Like, I got the guy in the draft. I think Caleb Williams is the number one pick. Marvin is the number one player. So I was very happy. Again, but let's move on to the player who got the next pick, and that's Big T, Tom DeSalvi, New York native now, or living in New York, not native. But so that's fun. Um, and so his number one pick at 4, he goes Malik Neighbors. Again, I think this was a button clicking pick. It's the pick you make. I think you're a little higher on Neighbors than I am. Uh, but I think that's just my giant hate bias coming in, and just lack of uncertainty at the quarterback position. Giants fans watch Colorado play and are begging Sanders to come be our quarterback right now, and that's a little scary to be part of. But Neighbors was the pick. easy to do. Again, it felt like Tom probably didn't need to even think about making that one.
Yep, Neighbors is the clear pick. Tom has quarterbacks. He didn't need a quarterback, so May's out of the picture. So it was Neighbors. If you like Odunze that much, you could take him over him. I think that'd be a really spicy pick if someone did that. I wouldn't hate it that much. I think his situation's a ton better, but overall, I think it's a good pick. Yeah, moving on. Jalen Wright. I like Jalen Wright a lot. I think he's like the fourth running back on the team, though. That's the only reason that he's this low. In a different situation, I think he's possibly drafted around where Jonathan Brooks is drafted or somewhere else. But yeah, really talented running back. Tom doesn't need him to start, so you could kind of wait, see how things turn out. I like the pick a lot.
Yeah, I mean his talent is crazy. I don't know how I feel about him being with the Dolphins, and he's not a 3 down back would be my guess. He's just a little bit tinier in a game that doesn't really allow for that super frequently. But this was the pick. I mean, I think that Tom made the pick he needed to make. Again, I'm gonna keep saying it felt like a button click pick. Like, oh, Wright's there. I took a wide receiver already. I'm not taking any of those. Um, his Green Bay bias may have come in for Lloyd just a little bit, but I think Wright was the pick. So can't hate on that. And I think he did a pretty good job. Which brings us to the third round. He got Jatavion Sanders, Carolina tight end, third tight end off the board. And you know what? I think this is a fine pick. Weirdly enough, I like the tight end he picked in the fourth round more. But that's a whatever thing. But I like Sanders. I don't, Carolina's a weird place. I probably go a different way if I'm Tom. I probably would have taken Estime there. But I think you live with it as Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Tom's not completely solidified at tight ends. If he wants to take a couple shots, I think it's fine. I don't have huge expectations for either of those tight ends, especially this year. So kind of a waiting game. A lot of these players feel like a waiting game for Tom. Might not pay off this year, but seems like he was going more for some potential, which, given his team strength, is probably a somewhat good idea.
Yeah. I think that brings us to his Jacoby Brissett pick, which immediately contradicts your last statement. He did not go for potential here. He went for a starting quarterback in the third round. Can't hate on it. Certainly getting a starting quarterback that is going to play at least a few weeks, supplement your team early in the year. I certainly don't hate it, and I don't know if there's. I mean, I think I take other people above him, maybe, but I think in Tom's position, looking to get into the playoffs, I like the pick.
Yeah, I really don't like the pick personally. He's not going to start him. Like, he's probably only starting like 4 weeks, and he's not going to start him in that time. So it feels like pretty much a wasted pick at that point. If you get him later, I'm fine with it. But there's still some pretty decent players available. I think he could have gone a different way there and probably would have had a better. There were better options available, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Which brings us to his fourth round pick. He goes tight end again, Theo Johnson. I like Theo Johnson a lot. I think interesting. He goes with another Giants receiver in some ways. But I don't hate this position for Theo Johnson. He's big. I think the potential is really sky high for him. Um, I guess I think Joe Shane did a pretty good job getting weapons this year for the Giants. Pretending that they have someone to throw them the ball is a whole different story. But I thought Theo was a great pick. I think his potential is really there. And I think he's in a good situation. He's the starting tight end day one from everything I've seen. So I think that was a great fourth round pick, and I was a little surprised he fell that far.
Yeah, I think he's solid, similar to Jatavion. Probably he might get some play time year one, but he's not going to play much for fantasy. But maybe in the future he could turn into something. Moving on, Malachi Corley. I thought that was a pretty good pick. I was surprised he kind of seemed like he kind of fell that far. I don't know. 5th-round picks are kind of most of them get dropped, but I thought it was a pretty solid pick for a 5th-round pick.
So Corley got picked 4.6, so I'm not sure where you got the 5th round from, but I won't call you out on live stream. But yeah, I thought it was a fine pick by him. I think that's who you go with at the time. So again, maybe you look Luke McCaffrey, but I like Corley. I think it was a good pick. And then he just got Isaiah Davis at the end of the 5th. Guy with a lot of competition in a running back room. But I am going to give Tom. I'm probably going to give Tom a B. I think, his first 2 picks, he clicked the button and did everything he needed to do. I think Theo Johnson was a great pick. The 3rd round was an interesting one, and who knows what Corley turns into. But I think a solid B. I think Tom did everything he needed to do here yesterday.
Yeah, I'll give him a B minus, C plus, B minus. I'll give him B minus. Didn't like some of the picks, but I liked his first 2 picks, so kind of carries the rest of the draft. Most important part of the draft.
For certain.
Moving on. Mr. Trevor is up next. He traded with me. He got the 105, and he took Drake May. That seemed like the player somewhat to pick for him, his team specifically. I still would have thought of Odunze if I was him. I get why he went May. I feel like May's either going to be a complete monster or he's going to be really, really bad. So we'll see which one he turns out to be, I suppose.
Yeah, I think Odunze would have been a tough pick for him, given that I think that trade involved giving up Waddle. At that point, just freaking hold on to Waddle rather than go for Rome. But I think May was probably the pick. I agree going with him at 5. Again, just for QB value. I still have high hopes for May. I think I talked about it a little bit with Brissett. I don't know why he's not the day 1 starter. But I like May. I think the potential's there. I hope New England doesn't mess around with him too much. And I think that was the pick. Moving on to 11, he goes Brooks, top running back drafted in the real draft. I have no issues with that pick. If I'm him, do I maybe throw Bo Nix instead of Brooks? Possibly. Do I maybe go quarterback? Possibly. But I think Jonathan Brooks, good pick, number 1 running back in this class, and I can live with that all day.
Yeah, I think it was a solid pick if you want a running back. I don't love where he ended up landing. I don't love the fact he's coming off an ACL and straight into the NFL. But they invested capital in him, so he's going to play. That's kind of what you need. So I thought it was a pretty solid pick.
Horns down.
I know you love Xavier Legette, so I'll let you fangirl over him a little bit.
So another Panther. I like him a lot. I was surprised he fell this far. He's got the best accent in football currently. I'm a big fan. He's a big body. I think he's better than what he showed at South Carolina. His situation's funky with the Panthers as well. Weird having to pick 2 Panthers, but I think that's what you pick if you're Trevor after getting Brooks. He's certainly a step above Burton and Polk in my mind. I know you disagree on Polk, but I think you pick him if that's where Trevor is, and I think that was a solid pick from him. Which is one of the last times I'll be saying that.
Hey, you picked another one of your guys, though.
He did. That's why I said one of the last times. I just thought his 3rd round pick was bonkers.
That was wild.
Yeah, so Trevor went Jordan Travis at 3.08. Jordan Travis coming off a season-ending injury, who is the third string quarterback this year in for the Jets. Um, I know Rodgers has 1 year left, but to think that Travis is his replacement feels like a very long shot. And it just felt wild to me that he made that pick. Um, I even go Spencer Rattler, I think, above Travis pretty easily, and he was picked 2 picks later. I think I probably would have gone Troy Franklin or Ricky Pearsall. At that point, we knew he was out of the hospital, so I probably would have picked Ricky Pearsall or Jordan Travis. It's a third-round pick. He took a flyer. He is a Jet fan, so he took a guy who's on his team that he can root for. But oof, I just didn't like that one very much.
I guess he's thinking he has the backup for Rodgers, I would assume is his thought, but I don't know if drafting Jordan Travis is a great play overall. Yeah, I'll let you talk about Joe Milton again since he's one of your guys.
I love Joe Milton, and I thought the fact Jordan Travis is picked 2 rounds before Joe Milton is just bonkers to me. But Joe Milton is awesome, and frankly, the reports out of the Patriots camp was that he was doing really, really great. And people, I think at one time it was who was actually the first round pick, Mayor Milton, like when you'd show up to camp. But big body, super freak athlete, cannon of an arm. The accuracy is better than Jake believes it to be. Awesome pick by Trevor with Milton. But like I'm still stuck on his Jordan Travis chaos.
Yep, they should turn Joe Milton into a better. What's his name? The guy on the
Taysom
Saints.
Hill.
Taysom Hill. That would be fun.
There's a lot of rumors that that's what's going to happen, or even run some wildcat, do some like different things with him. He has so much flexibility. That dude could play D end.
Probably could.
He 100% could play D end, and he's playing quarterback. And then the last pick was Laub.
Yeah. Last pick was Laub. He seems like a solid pick, backup for Vegas. Maybe all the way to the 5th round, so might as well.
Yeah. For Trevor, what's your grade?
I'm gonna give Trevor a C. I don't think any pick was like out of this world, got value at it, so I'm just gonna give him a solid average C.
So I would have given Trevor a B+ if not for Jordan Travis, because I think he made the picks he was supposed to make at the time. I think Brooks was fine. I think May was fine. I think Legit was a good pick. With the Jordan Travis pick in the 3rd round, I will move it to a B-. So from B+ to a B-, close to a C+. But because he got Joe Milton, I'll move it from C+ to B-. So you're welcome, Trevor. Moving on to Mr. Jones, our buddy Cam, who got his man from what I talked to him about. He's a big Brian Thomas guy. I think he had Brian Thomas above Rome from my conversation with him, which I like Brian Thomas a lot. Don't know if I agree with, but I really like the Brian Thomas pick at 9.
Yep, I like Brian Thomas. Like I said, I would have taken him over Worthy. I definitely wouldn't have taken him over Rome, but Cam's an interesting guy. Yeah, has a chance to be wide receiver 1 on that team towards the end of this year, maybe. Depends how you feel about Trevor Lawrence. I'm starting to have some doubts about him personally, so see how things turn out there. But overall, it's the right pick to make at that time.
For sure. At 205, he goes Michael Penix. Penix is such an enigma, which we talked about on our pre-draft thing. Just because the Falcons drafted him, it just still makes no sense to me. And honestly, most people probably are going to tell me that I needed to draft Michael Penix and trade up to go get Penix because I have Kirk Cousins. I really like Penix. I just don't know what his value is.
I don't like Penix that much. I don't think he was that good. So I'm just off on Penix personally, but I know there are a lot of people that liked him and liked him above a decent amount of probably two of the quarterbacks that went before him. So weird situation, and I don't really like the player, so not my favorite pick. But I know Cam really likes Penix, so I'm sure he was happy to get him.
So I guess Cam just thinks that all those catches that Rome had to make in coverage were because Penix threw perfect balls, I guess, because he hates Rome but loves Penix. But all the stats are that Rome had to make ridiculous catches because Penix threw it up to him.
I'm assuming that's his thought, but I don't know personally. But anyway, moving on. Braylon Allen was his next pick at the 303. Solid pick. I mean, Breece Hall has some injury history at this point. Get his back up. I think Braylon Allen's a decent talent. O-line isn't fantastic there, but at the end of the day, you're the running back, and Aaron Rodgers checks down a decent amount if he ends up playing. So,
yeah, I mean, Allen was not my big pick. I think those third down running backs, they're kind of two things to look at. The running back that's in front of them, and then their own talent. When you have guys like Vidal just got picked, Irving just got picked, Ray Davis comes after, Estime, you're looking at guys without ridiculous talent ahead of them. And I know Breece Hall's had some injuries, but there's no way Allen gets on the field if Breece Hall is a healthy player. So Allen, I just was down on Allen. I don't see the pick, but it sounds like Cam got who he wanted because, like I said, there are other running backs there, so can't hate on that. I just disagree with who he wanted. I think we can do the little combination thing for the last three.
sure.
Cam goes Baker, Tim Patrick, and Mason from San Francisco, the running back. Tim Patrick, now that he's moved to Detroit, maybe he fits a role there. They were in need of some people to get some catches. Baker's a New England guy. Maybe he competes with Polk and some of those other guys. They need some wide receivers. And then Mason, he's on San Francisco, which you can never hate. And they seem to always find some random guys to be good. Like Elijah Mitchell became good, even though Trey Sermon was the pick that everyone made. So I don't hate any of those picks. I think they were fine. I don't love any of them, but they're 4th and 5th round picks. So,
Yeah, I like the Mason pick. I think that's pretty good value. Seems like he's the backup for McCaffrey, who's somewhat hurt right now. So that's pretty good value, 508 for McCaffrey's backup. Tim Patrick, I don't really see him filling a super big role there. But again, at the 5'10", you can't really expect much to be available. So it is what it is. Overall, I'd give Cam a C+. I like the Brian Thomas pick. Like I said, I didn't really love the Penix pick, but I thought it was fine. Braylon Allen was decent, and then the rest was just kind of is what it is, end of the draft stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to give Cam a solid C because he got the round 1 right. I really am not huge on the rest of Cam's draft, but he is, so that's fine. But yeah, I like Brian Thomas, but that's about it on his draft board. So give Cam a solid C, which brings us to the worst player in this league, Mr. Marlin. 110 goes JJ McCarthy. I have to say I was a little surprised by that pick. I figured Knicks would end up going over JJ. He's out for the year. He probably is around 6 or 7 healthy, so I was surprised he only fell a couple spots missing in the year. But when he does come back, he's got draft capital and he's got a ridiculous receiver room that's waiting for him. But JJ is an interesting one. So not my favorite pick from you, but you can't hate on getting a quarterback.
Yeah, I kind of didn't really need anyone to start for me, so figured might as well get a guy at value. It's kind of how I was thinking about it. I like the situation there a ton, and I don't know. That was pretty much all I thought about. Knicks, I just don't think Nix is as good as McCarthy, and I really don't like the situation with their receiving core and stuff. So I feel like there's a lot of work still to do in Denver. So it felt like the right pick to make.
Yeah, fair enough. That leaves us with Ricky Pearsall at 3.12. Dropped probably a full round due to being shot. So I think it's a little unclear at this point when he's touching the field. But I see this is one I thought you got great value for. I think McCarthy probably should have fallen a little bit more, but I thought you got great value for Pearsall where you did take a third round flyer. He's got draft capital. He's in San Francisco. If they had traded Ayuk and he never got shot, which is two things that happened, he's probably really far up the board. So I like this pick. I think you made a good choice where he was picked.
Yeah, 312. Figured he's first round pick. Again, I don't really need starters, so and you're not really getting one at the 312 anyway. Didn't he was already discharged from the hospital, so didn't seem like it could be anything too insane, but obviously getting shots kind of crazy.
Yeah, you finish it off with Brandon Cooks, who is your boy. Oh, who you already dropped, so don't even worry about it. So I will give you, it's a little hard. So we talked about two picks. I'm going to give you a C again. I liked Pearsall, didn't like JJ. I don't know. I just think JJ probably should have fallen a little bit further. Probably close to the Penix range. I think he's ahead of Penix, but at the same time, being out that year is tough. And, when you could have gotten a Jonathan Brooks or a Nix or, one of those other running backs there, or, a wide receiver you liked, I think maybe use that pick there. But can't disagree with your logic. So assuming you're not going to grade yourself, we can move on to Mr. Biondino. Again, this is a one-pick drafter. Drafted Malik Wilson in fifth, but he got Keon Coleman. Anyone who watched my pre-draft saw that I was very high on Keon Coleman. He gives a lot of fun interviews, and he's in a wide receiver room that is pretty empty for a team that really slings the ball a lot. So I think the touches are there. I like this pick a lot. I would have picked him over Corum. So I think Biondi did a good job. I think I pick him over any of the next couple guys. So you got my approval, Biondino.
Yeah, I think the Coleman pick's solid. I really don't know if he's going to be good or not, but I feel like it was the pick to make. So I think he did what he was supposed to do. I like it a little above value, I guess. So I give him a C plus.
Look, we have one pick to look at, and I thought he killed that pick, so I'm going to give Biondi an A. I think he made the right choice in his pick. I agree with it. So for what he had, it's an A.
Okay. All right. Moving on to Mitch, my rival.
Yes. The hatred.
Yeah. So Mitch's first pick, he picked Adonai Mitchell. Not my favorite pick. I don't see really how his quarterback's gonna feed him and Pittman. Seems like he's kind of going to be a field stretcher. I don't know how fantasy relevant he'll be. I thought he was a decent receiver in college. I kind of liked him as a receiver more than I liked Worthy, even, to be honest. But just where he landed, don't see him really being a fantasy producer.
Yeah, I think Mitchell's a tough one because I think, there's some talent there. But again, he's with Anthony Richardson, who hasn't really shown that, in his 2 NFL games. So, put a little asterisk next to this. He looks to run the ball. He's kind of a running quarterback in many ways. They ran a lot of things for him to run the ball. They have Jonathan Taylor, which means they're going to run the ball. And then he's in an interesting receiver room. Pittman is very consistent, and I really like Josh Downs. I think he's going to get a lot of touches with Richardson. I I think I probably pick Legit or Lloyd over Mitchell, but you know, this is a pick I just don't hate on, but I think I go a different way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I just can't see it working out fantastically, so I don't love it, but at the same time.
That brings us to Kamani Vidal, third round pick, first pick in the third round. I think, as you said on our pre-draft video, people are pretty high on him. He's in a very interesting situation with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins probably both being ahead of him, but both having severe injury concerns in the past. There's some talent there. He fell pretty far in the regular draft compared to predictions, which is either a great sign or a terrible sign fantasy-wise. So I don't hate it. I like him better than Irving and Allen. So I think you make that pick. I think that was the pick to make there, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't know how talented he is, to be honest. So it's hard to see, but they're going to run the ball a lot. It's probably an okay pick to make. Obviously, talent's kind of weaning out there. I did like some of the other running backs available more. So wouldn't have been my pick, but I actually like the running back he took after him more personally. So
6 picks later, Audric Estime out of Notre Dame. So you like Estime? Explain to us why.
Sean Payton likes running backs. Feels like they're going to be very short yardage there. Seems like it's something he could do. Javante's injury prone, as we've seen. So seems like there could be work available, possibly. Seems like he's probably pretty suited to fill that role because I don't think Jaleel McLaughlin's going to be a every down kind of back.
We have talked about Sean Payton more on this podcast than I think any coach ever, which is very interesting. But besides the point, there may be some bias coming in here because the pick after Estime was Jordan Travis, which is crazy. So I think Estime was a terrific pick where he got him. I think it was the pick to make where he got him. I don't really love anybody behind him. So Mitch should be thanking Trevor for my opinion in some ways because it made Estime look so much better in my head when you say Estime got picked one pick above Jordan Travis. Anyway, I think that was a good pick by Mitch. Fourth round, he goes Brendan Rice and Greg Dortch. 2 receivers. I think Rice has some potential. We've kind of seen what Dortch can do previously. Mitch was on auto pick, sort of. He sent me a full list of who he wanted, so I was able to make his picks for him. So if the board goes a different way, maybe he takes a different one. But maybe he sees what's happening and makes some adjustments. But I probably make adjustments on both of those picks if I'm Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, hard to critique a 4th round pick too much. But at the same time, I thought they were okay picks. I'm not super high on either of them, really. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about them. I'm not a huge Greg Dortch guy, but
yeah,
probably would have taken the 2 running backs that went after his 2 picks instead, personally.
So I'm going to give Mitchell probably a B minus. I like his 3rd round between Vidal and Estime. I don't really love any of his receivers. So we're probably looking B minus, C plus, probably closer to C plus, but I think it was fine.
I'll give it a C minus, low grade. I think Estime was the only pick I liked out of all of it. So yeah, didn't like the 2nd round pick. That's kind of where all the value for his picks were. So didn't like the 301 either. So C minus.
All right, that brings us to Skullcap. The next 3 really don't have any picks, so kind of blow through these. He goes at 310, gets Spencer Rattler, which I think was a really it was auto picked, but I think it was actually a pretty decent pick. I like you don't know what's happening in New Orleans, and might as well throw it out there for a quarterback. Given Sean's state, he could use some depth, but his team is really good. So maybe this is a little bit of a future look, before he has to tank. So then, he goes Gesicki at 311, which again, probably not the pick, but for whatever reason, Sleeper thought he needed it. And then 411, he gets Luke McCaffrey, which I actually think was pretty good value in the fourth round for him.
Yep, I like the Luke McCaffrey pick. Rattler, I don't imagine as much, but I guess it's worth a shot. I don't know. Feels like he could have possibly taken Pearsall instead of Gesicki, but I guess he was on auto pick, so it's hard to critique someone that was on auto pick because the computer picked it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give Sean a C. I don't hate what happened with the auto pick.
Same. Could have gone worse.
Yes. That brings us to Mr. Taint. So he theoretically made a third round pick in the trade with Lemon. He got McMillan. And then 409, he got Isaac Gorendo. You seem pretty high on Isaac. I think McMillan's fine. I don't love either of these picks, but they're fine. I don't really have a strong opinion about either one. This is probably like a C plus, B minus for me as well. Granted, third and a fourth round pick.
Yeah, I mean, for what he had, I'd give him a B minus. I think McMillan's a okay prospect, and Garendo, I guess you're just taking a shot on San Francisco backups, which is always good. That dude's super fast, so I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, we got Trent, the champion, had no picks pretty much. Picked Noah Fant in the fourth, picked Rasheen Ali in the fifth. I think Noah Fant picks pretty solid. I mean, he has Laporta, so I doubt he plays much, but I think Fant's the only one left there now, so that's a pretty solid pick.
That was kind of my thought as well. I like the Fant pick. I thought that worked well. He somehow is a starter. It kind of feels like we're just waiting for him to be good still, and now it's a little too late for that.
Yep.
I like it. I'd give him a really good value. So I'd probably give him like a B plus for what he had.
Yeah, sure. That works. I think he needed a backup tight end, so I think Fant's pretty good.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of our draft recap. If anyone dislikes their ratings by us and their grades, fight Jake. He is our tech and fighter of the group. Just ask Mitch when they fought. But I thought everyone did a solid enough job, except for Trevor and his Jordan Travis pick. So, Jake, best pick in the draft. What was it?
Best pick in the draft. That's a good question. How are you going to put me on the spot like this? I'm going to say it was Rome for me.
Interesting. I probably, and this is a little bit of a cop out, I'm probably going Caleb Williams. I really am. I think it was the pick to make, and he's sitting there at 1. So it's a little bit of a cop out, but if I'm not going to go Caleb Williams, I would probably go Brian Thomas at 9. I think he could have easily moved up a couple spots, so I'd go Thomas at 9. I think I've made very clear what the worst pick in this draft was. In my opinion, that would be Jordan Travis in the third round. So do you have a similar opinion, or is there someone else that made a terrible pick?
It's Jordan Travis. For sure. There's no doubt about that.
So when Trevor finally gets Wi-Fi in his new place, he'll be sure to curse us out on that one. But whatever article he read that said Jordan Travis is the man is probably the article that said Puka was the man last year. And that worked out. So who knows?
Yep. Master draft for Trevor.
Yeah. But right. I think we can call this a day. Thank you guys for everything. And we'll be back with new content very shortly.
Peace.